Welcome to the Reality Revealed video series, a scientific and spiritual quest for the answers to the great questions of existence. This video, the first in the Reality Revealed series, is entitled, Did Everything Really Come From Nothing? A Rethinking of the Big Bang Theory. In this presentation, I will discuss two theoretical scenarios for explaining exactly how our reality might have resulted from the Big Bang. I will also present an original theory that explores the process by which reality might be formed. And I will offer an alternative interpretation of the Bible's depiction of creation viewed in light of this new theory. The content of this presentation is drawn in large part from my book entitled The Afterlife and the True Nature of Reality, and in particular relates to the book's subtitle, The Quest for Answers to the Great Questions of Existence. Among the great questions addressed in my book are, where do we go after we die? Where do we come from before we are born? And why are we here? And the book does indeed provide surprisingly specific answers to these questions, answers that are supported by compelling evidence, scientific evidence as well as spiritual evidence. In addition to the great questions noted above, there is another important question, and one that is arguably the greatest of the great questions, namely, where did it all come from? That is, how did our universe, everything in existence, originate? That question falls under the purview of cosmology, a branch of astrophysics that studies the origin, evolution, and structure of the universe. Cosmology's answer to the question, where did it all come from, is known as the Big Bang Theory. The Big Bang Theory posits that approximately 13.8 billion years ago, our universe, all of it, matter, energy, space, time, the laws of physics, everything sprang into existence in an instant out of what is called a singularity, which is conceptualized as an infinitely small, infinitely dense, and infinitely hot state of existence. Despite the use of the phrase Big Bang in the theory's title, the birth of our universe out of this singularity is not considered to have been an explosion as such, but rather a rapid expansion of the singularity. Continued expansion and cooling over billions of years has led to our universe in the state in which it presently exists. Esteemed physicists such as Stephen Hawking and Roger Penrose believe that nothing existed prior to the singularity, i.e., matter, energy, space, time, none of these preceded the singularity. The singularity's origin, purpose, and medium of existence are as yet unexplained by science. Considering that this so-called singularity is claimed to have been the primal seed out of which everything was born, science's complete cluelessness about the singularity, as well as what came before it, represents a glaring and shocking hole in the theory. Now think about this Big Bang Theory for a moment. The so-called singularity is described as being infinitely small. Well, that means, in effect, non-existent, since infinitely small means that no matter how small you can imagine it to be, it is much, much smaller still. Basically, the Big Bang Theory is saying that everything sprang from nothing in an instant, and for no discernible reason. That is about as unscientific an explanation as one can imagine. The Big Bang Theory, as offered by cosmologists, is, in point of fact, little more than a creation myth disguised as science. Terence McKenna's comments on the Big Bang Theory are priceless. Quote, "The Big Bang Theory is the limit test for credulity. I mean, hell, if you can believe that, then you can believe anything. Try and think of something more improbable than that contention." And this, quote, "It's just a limit case for unlikelihood that the universe would spring from nothing in a single instant for no reason. What the philosophers of science are saying is, give us one free miracle." And that's the important point, one free miracle. All humor aside, the Big Bang Theory truly does sound more like a religious miracle than a scientific hypothesis. It's about as far-fetched a notion as one can imagine. And indeed, there were many mainstream scientists who questioned the validity of the Big Bang Theory when it was first proposed, and there are many who continue to question it to this day. When I first learned of the Big Bang Theory, I was just as astounded as Mr. McKenna about this. The idea that everything sprang from nothing was seriously being peddled as a scientific hypothesis seemed ridiculous to me. Part of the reason I felt this way is the obvious unlikelihood of it. Another reason is the fact that I've never heard or read an explanation as to exactly how the entire universe could possibly have grown out of this effectively non-existent singularity. I have never seen a specific explanation, one understandable to laypersons, which describes a mechanism by which everything in existence could have been born out of virtual nothingness. Nevertheless, after many years of serious thinking and research, I've come up with two plausible and comprehensible explanations as to how it might actually have been possible for our universe to have been born out of virtually nothing. Here are my two scenarios for exactly how and why the Big Bang Theory might actually hold some truth. Big Bang scenario number 1. The singularity as a mass of supercompressed photons. A photon is defined as a quantum of electromagnetic radiation, or in simpler language, a photon is a particle of light. One of the many interesting and intriguing properties of photons is that they have no mass. Mass is the amount of matter in a substance, so to say that photons have no mass is equivalent to saying that photons are not matter. Interestingly, although photons themselves are not matter, there is a scientifically valid theoretical basis for claiming that matter can be created out of photons. Yes, that's right. The possibility that matter can be created from light is taken quite seriously by mainstream scientists. The reason for this is because quantum electrodynamics predicts that the mutual annihilation of two high-energy photons colliding under the right conditions will produce pairs of electrons and positrons, i.e., matter and antimatter. Scientists have actually proposed a design for a photon-photon collider using gamma-ray beams to test this prediction. Okay, all of the preceding discussion was the necessary background information. Now here is my first hypothesis, my Big Bang scenario number 1. Suppose that the singularity that preceded the Big Bang was simply an aggregation of supercompressed photons. Since photons have no mass, this would account for the singularity being a virtually non-existent point. An accumulation of massless particles would, after all, still be massless. That is, it would be infinitely small and occupy no space, exactly as the singularity is described. Now further suppose that 13.8 billion years ago, the singularity ruptured and released all those compressed photons in the event that we call the Big Bang. As those photons expanded outwards at the speed of light, some of them would inevitably collide with one another. As we learned above, quantum electrodynamics postulates that some of these collisions could result in the annihilation of the photons and the subsequent release of pairs of electrons and positrons, i.e., matter and antimatter. In other words, it would be entirely possible for the matter and antimatter of the universe to have been born out of a singularity that was composed of nothing but photons. The Big Bang may have been an event as simple as a bursting forth of light. This is eerily consistent with the Bible's version of creation in Genesis 1:3. And God said, "Let there be light." Big Bang scenario number 2. The Big Bang as the expansion of the organizing principle. In my book, The Afterlife and the True Nature of Reality, I introduce an original theory which came to me in part as a result of information revealed during a lengthy hypnosis session with Mira Kelly. I call this hypothesis the organizing principle theory, and in a nutshell, it can be summarized as follows. Everything we experience in our physical reality is comprised of energy and form. Science fully acknowledges that matter and energy are equivalent, as expressed in Einstein's famous equation E equals mc squared. Thus, energy serves as the raw material out of which our reality is made. I contend that there is an organizing principle, which is a natural process or mechanism that provides the information that molds that energy into the forms we experience as matter. This organizing principle utilizes, or is, mathematics. That is, the organizing principle is a mathematical engine that takes raw, unprocessed energy and transforms it into the encoded forms that serve as the basis of our reality. I propose that the Big Bang was not a bursting forth of everything out of some theoretically imagined singularity, but rather that it was the expansion of the organizing principle through the field of primal chaotic energy. Everything was already there in the form of unstructured energy. The organizing principle was released into that mass of chaos, and, as it spread through it, it caused a continuous structuring of the chaos into the patterns that represent the forms constituting our reality. Our sensory apparatus, i.e. our sensory organs and brain, are pre-designed to decode those energy forms into our experience of reality. The raw primordial energy was transformed by the organizing principle into the encoded forms of the underlying reality via mathematics. And our sensory apparatus then decode those forms into our experience of reality also via mathematics. This explains why nature appears to obey mathematical laws and formulas, and also why we humans are able to comprehend mathematics. Please note that I cover this process in much greater detail in my book. In the beginning, there was Logos. If the Big Bang Theory is science's version of the creation, then the Bible's version is expressed in John chapter 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. In that sentence, the word word is translated from the Greek word logos, and logos does indeed mean word, but for the ancient Greeks, logos had another deeper meaning. The Greek philosopher Aristotle made a distinction in mathematics between arithmos, which referred to arithmetic calculations, and logos, which represented the foundation of logic and reason upon which mathematical principles are based. To the Greek philosopher Heraclitus, logos represented a principle of order and knowledge, while the Stoic philosophers of ancient Greece identified logos with the divine animating principle pervading the universe. Seen in this light, the biblical phrase, "in the beginning was the Word," takes on a much different meaning, and one that is amazingly consistent with the organizing principle theory. If we consider that the organizing principle is a force of organization that creates form and structure out of chaos, and that the organizing principle was the primordial cosmological phenomenon responsible for the creation of the universe by way of the Big Bang, then an interpretation of logos as meaning the foundation of logic and reason upon which mathematics is based, and also the divine animating principle pervading the universe, makes much more sense than interpreting logos as simply word. For now, with this richer definition of logos, we can render John 1:1 as follows. In the beginning was a divine animating principle which used mathematical logic and reason that pervaded the universe, and that divine animating principle was God. This makes infinitely more sense as an explanation of creation than does the vague notion that a word was the causative agent of our reality. While I don't subscribe to any particular system of organized religion, I do believe that there are profound truths contained in the Bible, many of which have been either intentionally or accidentally edited or redacted. In the case of John 1:1, I honestly believe that the original intent of logos was not its literal meaning of word, but rather its deeper meaning of order, logic, and reason. I believe that the word logos in the Bible is referring to a mathematics-based process of creation, which I call the organizing principle. As an explanation for the creation of reality, the theory of the organizing principle provides a degree of cogency, comprehensibility, and elegance that is sorely lacking in the vague and unsupported theories offered by both science and religion. For a much deeper discussion of this topic and related topics, please see my book, The Afterlife and the True Nature of Reality. It's available at Amazon in both paperback and Kindle formats. And also please visit my websites for free sample chapters from the book, as well as audio files of actual recorded portions of my hypnosis session with Mira Kelly. Keep an eye out for more videos in the Reality Revealed series, which cover other topics relating to the nature of reality and the afterlife. Thank you for listening. All the best.